The question today is, what do you do if you don't want a divorce but your spouse does? That was a situation that I was in about 10 months ago at the time of this recording, and it's a position that frankly sucks. Hi, I'm Jeff Campbell from divorcedparentsclub.com, and that's the question we're diving into today. So first, from a legality standpoint, can your spouse actually divorce you if you don't want to? Can they do it without your consent? And the answer, sadly, is yes. These days, states don't want to stop a divorce if one spouse wants out. They're not going to do that. That may have been the case decades ago. That's not how it works now. However, it will be harder, more time consuming, and a lot more expensive if one spouse is fighting it and the other spouse is pushing for it. Now, when a spouse files, they do have to give a reason for the divorce. However, these days, virtually all states have a no-fault kind of clause in their laws and language regarding divorce. So they don't really have to prove anything, and you can't really contest whatever that reason is. Most of the time, they list something like irreconcilable differences. I'm sure you've seen that. And that basically just means you don't get along anymore. And you know, you can't really contest that or try and prove that, yes, we do get along. It just doesn't work like that. So they can do it. It's just going to cost a lot more money, and you're going to end up with an expensive court battle that, you know, one or both of you may end up paying $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for. And so in my case, I didn't actually fight it. We went through some various stages after my wife told me she wanted a divorce. You know, I went through the begging and the pleading, and then I went through the angry phase, and, you know, I went through a few different phases. But once I accepted it, I just kind of went along with it. At the end of the day, I don't want to be married to someone that doesn't want to be married to me. I deserve better than that, and so do you. So should you beg and plead? I know I did a little bit when she first told me. And the answer is definitely no. Do not beg, do not plead, do not whine and cry and think, well, if she could, you know, just see how heartbroken I am, maybe she'd change her mind. That's not going to work. It's unattractive when someone is needy and desperate and begging and pleading. That's just not attractive. And so you don't want to present that side to your spouse if you're in this position. You might feel that way. I know I did. It's okay to feel that way, but you have to think about what you're showing your spouse, the qualities. How are you conducting yourself? And you don't want to appear needy and desperate. That she's just going to send her running in the opposite direction, and that's not what you want. Should you fight the divorce is the next question. Should you get angry and put up roadblocks and try and slow this or prevent this from happening? And the answer really, again, is no. That's also not really going to get you the results that you want. If your goal is to try and convince your spouse to not divorce, you don't want to go to either one of those extremes. You want to focus on being the best version of you that you can possibly be, and not beg or plead or get angry to try and stop the divorce. At the end of the day, you can't control anything other than you and your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, and your reactions. You can't control anything else, including your spouse. And if you try to, it's going to blow up in your face. Should you go no contact? You see a lot of videos on YouTube about, oh, well, you know, if you're trying to get an ex back, you go no contact. Well, what is that, first of all? No contact basically means you cut off initiating any contact whatsoever. You're not liking and commenting on their social, you're not sending them texts, you're not calling, you're not sending emails. Basically, you're pretending they don't exist. And if you're married and your spouse is wanting a divorce, that could be hard to do, especially if you're like me and you have kids. I have 3 kids, and it's virtually impossible for me to go no contact even if I wanted to. But if you do have that option, let's say your spouse moved out. Maybe they were having an affair and they moved in with their affair partner, and you know, maybe you don't have kids, or maybe your kids are grown, or maybe the kids are just with you and she doesn't want any part of that. Whatever your situation, let's assume for the moment that you could go no contact. Is that a good idea? And I don't really think it is. You don't want to appear needy and desperate. You don't want to be constantly calling and texting, but you do if you are working on yourself, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but if you're working on being the best version of you that you can be, they're not going to see that if there's zero contact between the two of you. So I do want you to have some level of contact. If you've got kids, that's an instant reason for there to be some level of communication. You're just sending texts probably, checking in about, this or that, doctor's appointments and school and grades. And there's plenty of reasons if you've got kids for there to be some minor communication. Don't use that when they reply. Don't use that as an excuse though to oh, hey, by the way, can I talk to you about our relationship? Don't do that. Keep the communication brief, keep it pleasant, keep it business oriented. If you don't have kids, it could be about bills. Maybe, hey, I need money for the mortgage payment or whatever it is. Do keep it down to business items. Keep it brief. Keep it, lighthearted and professional. Don't make it angry. Don't make it needy. Don't make it, oh, I want to talk about our relationship. Don't do any of those things. Just keep it simple. Also, match and mirror their behavior. That comes from Coach Corey Wayne, who's a guy I follow on YouTube. But match and mirror their behavior. So if you send a 5-sentence text to them and they reply with 3 words, don't keep sending 5 sentences. Match and mirror what they're doing. If they take an hour to reply to your text, take an hour to send your next one. That way you're not appearing needy, you're not appearing desperate, you're not going way overboard, because those behaviors are going to push them further away, and you don't want that. Now, how to come to terms with a divorce that you don't want. This is something I really struggled with. I still struggle with it. It's been 10 months or more since my wife told me she wanted a divorce, and it came out of the blue. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but I thought it was pretty good, and I didn't see it coming whatsoever. She said she'd felt like that for a couple of years, but never bothered to say anything. Of course, that's not very fair, but it is what it is. Nothing I can do about it. So how am I dealing with it? Well, the first thing I started to do, I went through all of those phases we talked about, the needy and desperate and clingy and angry and all that. But fairly quickly, I just decided to focus on being the best version of me that I could be. And I talked about that a little earlier in the video. What does that mean? Well, for me, I started eating less. Part of it was I just, my stomach was in knots and I wasn't that hungry, and, divorce diet, I call it, but I lost 25 pounds. But I also stopped eating before noon. They call that intermittent fasting, I guess, and I'm not an expert on that, but I basically just stopped eating breakfast, and I didn't eat until lunchtime. And between those two things, I started walking 2 miles a day every day, and I started going back to martial arts, which is something I used to do a lot, and I had kind of slacked off on during 2020 and parts of 2021, and so I got back into that. And so all of those things were benefiting me. They were benefiting my physical health and my mental health. I also started meditating every day for initially about 5-10 minutes a day, and then I got up to about 30 minutes a day. And I still do that. It's a great way to kind of reset my brain and allow it to stay calmer in the face of chaos, essentially. And I just, a friend of mine just told me about an app called Insight Timer. You may have heard of it. I think there's another one called Headspace that's similar. And my app is a free app. I can just sort meditations on there by length, by male voice, female voice, background music, and I can pick specific themes if I want one about anxiety and all of that. And it's great. It's customizable, totally free. And I just listen to a few of those every morning, usually before I even get out of bed. And sometimes my toddler is in bed with me, so I just pop in my earbuds and I listen to that while she's sleeping next to me. And it works great to kind of recenter me, keep me even keeled, and help me deal with the chaos and challenges that come with going through a divorce that I didn't want and didn't see coming. So those are the things that I did, but it doesn't have to be what you do. Focus on yourself. Focus on being the best version of you that you can be. The initial instinct is to reach for drugs or alcohol or things like that. And those, I'm not against those things. I had a Manhattan last night. I'm not against drugs and alcohol. I am against, using those things to kind of prop up your emotions or to numb the pain that you're dealing with. You got to work through this stuff, and you got to find healthy ways, healthy coping mechanisms of working through this stuff. You know, my wife, you know, has always had a little bit of a love for drink, and you know, when she was kind of told me about the divorce, you know, she kind of like went a little bit further in the other direction. She started smoking again and doing all kinds of stuff like that. And you know, and I'm not faulting those things. I understand why people do those things, but that's not what you want to do. You've got to get yourself in a better space mentally, physically, and emotionally. And so find healthy coping mechanisms, whether that's exercise, whether that's meditating, whether that's yoga, or just walking with friends, just hanging out with friends. Hanging out with friends was something that I had slacked off on the last couple of years. I had put all my eggs, so to speak, in the parenting basket and the marriage basket and the work basket, the employment basket. And my hobbies had taken a definite backseat, and my friendships had taken a definite backseat. And I can see now that those things, my not doing those things, actually led to the demise of my marriage, because the things that I used to do that helped my wife fall in love with me, I wasn't doing anymore. And I had also become complacent in our marriage. So get back to finding yourself, doing the things that you love doing. Do you love golf? Maybe you love playing pool. Maybe you love, you know, darts or whatever it is. Get back to doing what you love to do. Find healthy coping mechanisms and be the best version of you that you can be. And if anything is going to work to stop the divorce, to get your spouse to change their mind, it is seeing these changes in you. And because we can tell our spouse all day long, oh yeah, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'll be better, I'll be better. Words don't really mean anything. Actions do. And not just actions on one day. Especially if your spouse has been fed up for a long time, like mine apparently was, that I didn't know about. You've got to like show consistently improved behavior over a period of time. In my case, it's been 10 months, and I've been pretty damn consistent in my behavior, and I don't see any signs of her changing her mind. She's got a new boyfriend now anyway, so who knows where that's going to go. But at the end of the day, I'm a much better version of me today than I was 10 months ago, and I get to keep that. She doesn't get that in the divorce, and whenever I do decide to get in a new relationship, I'm going to be a better version of me going into that relationship, and that's great. That's a great byproduct of a painful divorce that I didn't want, and I hope that's not where yours goes. But if anything's going to work to save your marriage, it's being the best version of you that you can be consistently over a period of months and letting your spouse see that. I hope that works for you. I'll see you in the next video. Comment down below with your situation and where you're at, and especially if you have a question you'd like to see me answer in a future video. Thank you.